In 2004, an Iranian girl was left blind and disfigured after a man threw acid in her face for declining his marriage proposal. In response to his crime, instead of paying money or serving jail time, the girl insisted that her attacker should have 20 drops of acid squeezed into his eyes. The Iranian courts ended up agreeing with the punishment. On average, about 12 humans are killed by sharks every year, but about 12,000 sharks are killed by humans every hour. In 1915, Essie Dunbar passed away after suffering from a seizure, and her sister was late for her funeral. When she arrived, the ministers had already lowered the coffin into the ground, but she demanded to see her sister one last time. Upon opening the coffin, the dead woman sat up and smiled. She lived on for another 47 years. This is a photo of Emmett Till's killers smiling after being acquitted of the brutal murder in 1955. Protected against double jeopardy, the next year the two men publicly admitted that they did indeed kill the 14-year-old boy. Princess Qajar of Persia was a national symbol of beauty in the early 1900s. It is said that more than 10 young men committed suicide because she rejected them. A researcher once played an audio recording of an elephant that had died to its herd. They went wild looking for him, and the elephant's daughter called for days afterward. In 1984, singer Marvin Gaye was shot and killed by his own father on the day before his birthday. He used a gun that Marvin had gifted him despite their sour relationship. Marvin was said to be suicidal at the time, so he hit his father during an altercation. His father always said that if any of his kids tried to hit him, he would kill them. He shot Marvin once in the chest and he was dead. When the first Star Wars movie premiered in 1977, France was still executing criminals with the guillotine. In 1967, 15-year-old James Gordon Wolcott shot and killed his mother, father, and sister after sniffing airplane glue. Today, he's an award-winning psychology professor and the head of the behavioral science department at a university in Illinois. A few days before he was assassinated, President Lincoln told several people about a dream he had. In the dream, Lincoln saw a soldier standing beside a casket, and he could also hear people weeping. Still dreaming, Lincoln asked the soldier, "Who's dead in the White House?" The soldier turned to him slowly and replied, "The president." In the late 1980s, a woman went on a vacation getaway where singles could meet other singles. She quickly thought she had met the man of her dreams and decided to sleep with him that night. When she woke up in the hotel room the next morning, the man was gone and there was a small wooden coffin on the table next to her. Inside was a note that read, "You are now HIV positive. Welcome to the world of AIDS." Teddy Roosevelt's son Quentin fought in World War I as a pilot. He was killed in a dogfight and his plane crashed behind enemy lines. But the Germans gave him a full military burial with honors. They apparently admired the fact that a president's son chose to fight. During World War II, prisoners of war were treated so nicely in Canada that many of them didn't want to leave when they were released. During the same war, Soviet forces tried to train dogs to run under enemy tanks with bombs on their backs. However, this evil plan fortunately ended up failing miserably. Because the dogs had been trained using Soviet tanks, when it came to the real battlefield, many dogs ended up running under friendly Soviet tanks, blowing them up instead. In 1999, the Davises had to give up their pet chimpanzee Mo after it bit off the finger of a woman who was visiting their California home. He was placed in a monkey sanctuary called Animal Haven Ranch. On Mo's 39th birthday, the couple visited him with a cake when two other chimps escaped from their enclosures. They approached the couple and started attacking them for not giving them cake too. Chimpanzees are twice as strong as humans and have no limits for savagery. They have also been known to attack body parts that humans need for survival. So acting accordingly, they ripped off the husband's face and bit off his fingers as well as his floppy trouser snake. The man was conscious during the whole attack and managed to survive after dozens of surgeries. Shortly afterwards, Mo escaped from the sanctuary and was never seen again. In 1999, Richard Anthony Jones was convicted of a felony even though he had a strong alibi. He spent 17 years in prison until authorities found his doppelganger living in the same town with the same first name. This is a photo of mobsters hiding their faces from the media during Al Capone's trial in 1931. In 2014, a man from Queens, New York spent 5 months in prison, unaware that his bail was only $2. In the year 2000, 6-year-old Diedrich Owens brought a gun to school and shot and killed 6-year-old Kayla Rowland after she refused to kiss him. Because of his age, he couldn't be legally prosecuted, and he remains the youngest school shooter to date. In the original story of Peter Pan, Peter murders members of the Lost Boys when they grow too old. He did this because being an adult was against the rules in Neverland. In the middle of battles with pirates, Peter would also switch sides to kill members of the Lost Boys just for fun. Up until the 1800s, Turkish women who were accused of cheating on their husbands were tied up in a sack filled with cats, then thrown in the ocean. In 1977, 20-year-old Colleen Stan was kidnapped while hitchhiking in California. She was locked in a box the size of a coffin under her kidnapper's bed for 7 years. She had to lie still and couldn't make any noise for 23 hours a day in pitch black darkness. Her kidnapper was only caught when his wife finally reported him to police. In December of 1980, a 19-year-old girl from Minnesota was involved in a car accident in sub-zero temperatures. After the crash, her car wouldn't start, so she walked towards a friend's house who lived 2 miles away. When she was just 15 feet from her friend's front door, she collapsed. That night, temperatures dropped to negative 30 degrees Celsius, and no one was around to help her. 6 hours later, she was discovered frozen solid. She was immediately transported to a nearby hospital, but her skin was too hard to even pierce with a needle. Amazingly, she was still alive, but her pulse was only measured at 12 beats per minute. Hoping for a miracle, doctors wrapped her in a heated blanket, and 2 hours later, she regained consciousness. After 49 days in the hospital, she completely recovered and suffered no permanent damage to any part of her body. During a World War II battle in the Pacific, American soldier Thomas Baker was badly wounded but refused to be evacuated. Instead, he ordered his squad to leave him propped up against a tree with nothing but a pistol and 8 bullets. Later, they returned to find Baker dead holding an empty pistol, with 8 dead Japanese soldiers lying around him. 65 years after it crash-landed on a beach in Wales, an American P-38 fighter plane emerged from the sand where it lay buried. After Colonel Robert Gould Shaw was killed in the Second Battle of Fort Wagner in 1863, he was buried in a mass grave as an insult for leading the first all-black regiment in American history. When troops tried to recover his body, his father proudly said, "We will not have his body removed from where it lies, surrounded by his brave and devoted soldiers." The Scold's Bridle was a device that was used to publicly humiliate women until the 19th century. On the inside, the device had a metal plate that would press down on the tongue and prevent the wearer from speaking. It was placed on women who were said to be troublesome to keep them quiet and prevent them from gossiping. This is a powerful photo of a starving Ugandan boy holding the hand of a missionary in 1980. For many years, the lead singer of Lynyrd Skynyrd told his bandmates that he wouldn't live to the age of 30. His dad reported that even when he was a child, Ronnie would often say, "Daddy, I'll never be 30 years old." When his father asked why he kept saying this, Ronnie would just reply, "Daddy, that's my limit." Sure enough, when he was 29 years old, Ronnie Van Zant died in a plane crash. In 1987, 17-year-old Daniel LaPlante killed a nursery school teacher and her 2 kids in Townsend, Massachusetts. But despite conducting a massive manhunt, authorities couldn't find him afterwards. Not long after, a girl who he previously dated opened her closet one night. She found David standing there with a machete, and he was wearing her mother's clothes with makeup smeared across his face. He then tied the family up, but the youngest sibling managed to escape and alert police. But once again, they couldn't find Daniel. 2 weeks later, the family had moved out, but they decided to drive past their home only to find Daniel standing in the window watching them. The police were called once again, and Daniel was finally arrested in the home. Upon further inspection, it turned out that he had been living in their home the whole time that they were looking for him. In 2017, a billionaire from Brazil announced that he was gonna bury his Bentley for his afterlife. After receiving a lot of online hate for his wasteful decision, he revealed that it was simply a publicity stunt for organ donations. He said people bury things that are much more valuable than cars and nobody seems to care. Patty Mallet became pregnant at age 17 and was pressured by multiple people to abort the baby, but she refused. That baby was Justin Bieber. The Titanic fired 8 emergency flares before it sank. A ship in the area saw the flares and that the boat looked uneven in the water. But the captain didn't believe that the rockets were fired in distress, so he didn't take action. If he had, all of the Titanic's passengers could have been rescued, but instead help didn't arrive for more than 2 hours. In 1941, Soviet archaeologists wanted to open up the tomb of Timur, aka Tamerlane. He was a Turco-Mongol conqueror from the 14th century who is often regarded as one of the greatest military leaders of all time. However, locals urged the Soviets not to do so since it was believed that opening the tomb would curse the world. This was mainly due to the inscription on his tomb which read, "When I rise from the dead, the world shall tremble." And inside his casket, there was another mysterious note that read, "Whoever disturbs my tomb will unleash an invader more terrible than I." But despite the warnings, Joseph Stalin ordered for Tamerlane's body to be exhumed. Just 3 days later, Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa and invaded the Soviet Union. In 1856, a woman died just after giving birth to a Greek monk named Mihailo Tolotos. The very next day, the baby was taken to a monastery on top of Mount Athos. He then spent his entire 82-year life completely isolated from women. He's the only known man in history to have lived and died without ever seeing a woman. While this may look like a regular city upon first glance, it's actually the world's largest cemetery. Located in Iraq, the Valley of Peace contains over 5 million bodies. Joseph Matheny was a serial killer from Baltimore who was active from the 1970s till the 1990s. Following his arrest, Joseph not only confessed to killing numerous men and women, he also claimed that he used their meat in the burgers that he sold out of his food truck. This is a comparison of a pug in 1880 versus what the breed looks like today. The pug was selectively bred to feature an extremely flat face, which has contributed to severe breathing difficulties as well as eye problems in many of these dogs. If a person dies on a plane during a flight, their body is typically moved to an empty first-class seat until the plane lands. After the Titanic disaster, the U.S. Congress passed a law requiring passenger vessels to carry more lifeboats. But the added weight made one ship called the SS Eastland too top-heavy. In 1915, the ship capsized before even leaving the dock, killing 844 people. In 2018, a 66-year-old Canadian man was arrested for murdering 8 people over a 7-year span. During that time, he worked as a mall Santa in Toronto. In 1932 Arizona, a man dressed as Santa Claus jumped out of a plane to parachute into a Christmas parade. Sadly, his parachute failed to open and hundreds of parents had to cover their kids' eyes as Santa plummeted to his death. This is a photo of a man dressed as Santa Claus visiting dying workplace children in a hospital ward in 1906. In December of 1959, a man from Los Angeles murdered his wife with a hammer before taking his own life, all while his 3 kids watched in horror. For the next 50 years, the house went completely untouched, as all of the Christmas decorations were still visible from the windows. Josephine Myrtle was born in 1868 with a rare genetic anomaly known as diphagus. Her body was completely normal down to the waist, but below it she had 2 pelvises and 4 legs. This is what toilets looked like in many medieval castles. There were a few cases of assassins climbing up these poop chutes and waiting for their targets to sit down before killing them. In 1977, the drummer for Lynyrd Skynyrd survived the plane crash that killed half the band. He then walked to a nearby house for help only to be shot by the homeowner. He apparently saw a bloody long-haired man and fired a warning shot that hit the drummer in the shoulder. Once Pyle shouted that there was a crash, the farmer helped him and he went on to fully recover. In the 1920s, not much was known about the effects of radium, so when a group of women were paid to use glow-in-the-dark radioactive paint, they were told that it was completely harmless. But after years of licking the tips of their paintbrushes while using this radium-based paint, the devastating effects eventually became obvious. Many of these women developed a condition known as radium jaw, which caused horrible tumors around the mouth, and some of their jaws would literally fall off. The ancient Romans would often substitute criminals into plays for punishment. So if a character died in the story, a real criminal would die on stage. The ancient Aztecs built swords out of obsidian, which is said to be 50 times sharper than surgical steel. These swords were apparently sharp enough to decapitate not only a human with one strike, but also a horse. If you're ever feeling down in life, just remember you're not this guy. This Brazilian prisoner spent 5 years digging an escape tunnel only to realize he was too fat to fit out the other end. His only choice was to give up on his master plan and call for help. When China used to carry out executions with a bullet to the back of the head, the family of the condemned would be sent an invoice for the cost of the bullet. Christine Palilla was an outcast at school until 2 popular girls gave her a makeover. To say thank you, she shot both of them in the cooter before killing them. Within the walls of Alcatraz, Al Capone's mind completely melted to the point where he would throw his own feces at other inmates. He was paroled early simply because he was too much of a lost cause to be a threat. This is a photo of Anne Frank's father Otto revisiting the attic where they hid from the Nazis. Sadly, he was the only surviving member of the family as his 2 daughters died just weeks before their camp was liberated. In 1783, a boy was born with 2 heads, but one of the heads was upside down. Surprisingly, the other head was somewhat functional, and the boy even claimed that he could hear the other brain talking to him. Tigers are some of the most vengeful animals on the planet and will take revenge on anyone who has wronged them. In 1997, a Russian poacher shot a tiger and left him for dead before stealing part of his meal. The tiger later found the poacher's cabin and waited 12 hours for him to arrive before killing and eating him. In 2016, a Somalian suicide bomber brought explosives onto a commercial flight with the intent of blowing up the plane. 20 minutes after takeoff, the explosives detonated and blasted a hole in the side of the plane. The bomber was instantly sucked out and ended up being the only fatality. In 1832, a man named John Rennie personally designed and carved his own headstone before dying. It's an acrostic puzzle that reads, "Here lies John Rennie, 46,000 different ways." In 1993, a Canadian lawyer named Gary Hoy claimed to a group of students that the windows in his building were unbreakable. To prove this, he threw himself at the window at full force. While the glass didn't break, the frame popped out, and Gary fell 24 stories down to his death. In 2012, a Texas father beat his 5-year-old daughter's molester to death. But a grand jury declined to indict the man because they decided that he was justified in using deadly force to protect his daughter. A man who suffered a stroke in 2004 permanently lost the ability to feel sad. A Greek war veteran was once diagnosed with cancer in his mid-60s and was only given 9 months to live. But he went back to those same doctors 25 years later to tell them that he was alive and well. But he soon found out that all of the doctors who diagnosed him were now dead. The man ended up living to the age of 102. Steve Jobs could have avoided a premature death from cancer by having it properly treated. Instead, he refused surgery for 9 months and favored dietary treatments and other alternatives. Shortly before he died, he claimed that it was one of his biggest life regrets. With a 9% fatality rate, being the president is by far the most dangerous job in America. Hours before his death, Edgar Allan Poe was acting delirious in the streets of Baltimore. He was wearing another man's clothing and was unable to explain how he got there. While many ideas have been put forth, his cause of death remains a mystery to this day. Floyd and Violet Hartwig were married for 67 years and died while holding hands. They met in elementary school and exchanged over 100 love letters while Floyd served in World War II. In 2015, their hospice beds were pushed together so that they could spend their final moments holding hands. When Floyd passed away, Violet followed him just 5 hours later. A grieving father had this tombstone designed for his wheelchair-bound son to depict him as free from his earthly burdens. In 1959, police were called into a segregated library in South Carolina because a 9-year-old black boy refused to leave. He later got a PhD in physics from MIT but died in 1986 as one of the astronauts on the Challenger. And the library that once refused to lend him books is now named after him. In 1964, the FBI sent Martin Luther King Jr. an anonymous letter along with a cassette tape. The letter claimed that the cassette had recorded evidence of King committing illegal acts towards women. The letter also clearly implied that suicide would be the most suitable course of action for Dr. King. During World War II, Allied forces accidentally sunk a ship carrying concentration camp survivors, killing about 5,000 of them. After learning that her husband was unable to have kids, a woman from Prague contemplated both murder and suicide. She eventually decided on suicide and jumped from her third-story balcony. However, she landed on her husband, who just so happened to be standing in the street below her. He died, but since he cushioned her fall, she survived. Back in 1922, children suffering from diabetic ketoacidosis were kept in large wards. Grieving family members would visit their comatose children and sit by their beds, waiting for their inevitable deaths. But one day, 3 scientists walked into one of these wards and began injecting the children with a new purified extract called insulin. Before they had reached the last comatose patient, the first few that they injected started waking up, and a room of death turned into a place of joy. After surviving a fire, Taka the Shiba Inu is now a therapy dog for burn victims. In 2010, 7-year-old Stella Bernston drowned in some icy water in Sweden. Her body was found 4 hours later by a rescue helicopter and she was taken to the nearest hospital. Despite her body being only 13 degrees Celsius, doctors managed to save Stella by slowly warming her.